Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's good to be with you again. I don't have a lot in the way of news today, except I think by now you probably already know we are definitely going back to not to Panama City. We're going back to Destin, to Fort Walton Beach for the feast this year at the Emerald Coast Convention Center. And we're making arrangements for those of you who really like to be in the same place with a lot of other people. There are 2 adjoining condos there, both of which have a good set of rooms. And check the website. We hope we'll get it all straightened out by the time you see this. Check the website, and we'll tell you what those are. And if you can't find any other way, we'll call the office and ask Larry. He'd be more than happy to explain the problem to you and get you lined up to where you and your friends would like to be at the Feast of Tabernacles. We're still short-handed here and wrestling with some computer problems, and we need your prayers that God will send us the right people to do the jobs we need, because without people, we can't do a lot of stuff. Now, this has been, hands down, the craziest end of a year that I really can ever recall. I don't remember a December like this, and of course the crash that we had back, when did it actually start? September, October? When everything all of a sudden came unstuck and the Congress is going to work to give away $700 billion? Again, I have not seen that. Now, I was a little too young to know what was going on in December of 1941, so I can't attempt a comparison, and the crash of 29 was before I was born, so I've never seen anything to compare with it. One of the things is I think we have gotten so used to prosperity that we're having a hard time as a people really understanding, considering, or coping with the alternative. Even the poor in this country have done so well that they have no frame of reference for how the poor live in the rest of the world. I don't have the statistics in front of me today, but, a humongous number of people who fall in the category of poor in this country own their own home. It's got 4 walls. It's got rooms in it. It's got indoor plumbing, a roof. They're dry and warm in the rainy season, and they're warm in the winter. But they're poor. An even larger number of them own a car. Some of them have 2 cars. Nearly everybody's got a television set. And the story just goes on and on and on. Poverty, to us, it seems to be a relative thing. And as bad as things just, may get in the recession that we're about to go into, or into already, I should say, is that we still will not understand how the rest of the world lives and how the poor do in the rest of the world. Because the fact is, even the Great Depression, 75% of the people who wanted to work in this country had jobs. 75% still working. So it's not as though everything stops and everybody's starving and famine and so forth is going on like did in the days when Abraham had to go down into Egypt to eat. It's not going to be like that. For us, this is a good time for us to think about where we are and who we are and what kind of lessons we can learn and carry with us into a period of time like this. The very first chapter of the book of Proverbs ends with a wonderful example of a literary form that they call personification. It's helpful when you're reading the Bible to understand that this sort of thing goes on. Personification is a literary form in which you take an abstract concept and you make it into a person and allow it to speak and act and do stuff. But what Solomon does is take wisdom, an abstract idea, and he turns her into a woman and allows her to speak to us. And in verse 20, Proverbs 1, verse 20, wisdom cries without, she utters her voice in the streets. In other words, she's not off in a cave somewhere. She's right out there in the street outside, and she's out there talking. She cries in the chief places of concourse, in the openings of the gates. She utters her words, saying, how long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? Hope that didn't sound too loud by banging my desk. How long? How long will the scorners delight in their scorning? And how long will fools hate knowledge? Now, how should we take this? Well, I think what it seems to be saying is that wisdom is not esoteric. It's not hidden. It's not hard to find. It is everywhere, and she speaks to us constantly. Now, it seems counterintuitive because wisdom seems inordinately rare. How often do you encounter a person who seems to be really wise, who, when the person speaks, You kind of hang on what they're trying to say because you know that a lot of what they're saying is going to change your life. Not very often. Well, how can that be then if wisdom is everywhere? Well, it's obvious that fools don't want to hear. Why? Well, because if I hear it, if I actually see it, if I come face to face with it, I might have to change something I want to do. These are simpletons. They are people lacking the most common sense. Wisdom is available everywhere, and the reason they don't have it is because they don't want it. She goes on to say, turn at my reproof. When you come up against this, don't keep on doing the same thing. Change. I will pour out my Spirit unto you. I will make known my words to you. Just listen, fool, and I'll pour it over you like a barrel of molasses. But because I have called, and you refused, I stretched out my hand, and you wouldn't take it. You have set at naught all my advice. You wouldn't have any of my reproof. Because of this, I will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear comes. When your fear comes like a desolation, and your destruction comes as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish comes upon you. Now, we are seeing a really classic example of this right now in the news every time you turn the news on. We're seeing the example of it in Governor, what's his name, Blagovich, or whatever his name is, the governor of Illinois. Every time we turn around, he is becoming the butt of every joke. Every comedian will have a little Blago thing in his routine somewhere. And the whole country is laughing at him when they're not despising him. This is exactly what wisdom says. I'll laugh at you. I will make you the butt of everybody's joke. Again, we're talking about an abstract wisdom, not a real person, but personified in a woman who says, we're all going to laugh at you. The wisdom was there. You wouldn't take it. But I think the next thing that follows here probably will not be what follows on the governor's part. At least not this way, although today I kind of wondered. I think I heard this morning that he was meeting with some clergymen for prayer. Then they will call me. I will not answer. They will seek me early. They won't find me. For that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would not have any of my counsel. They despised my reproof. Therefore they will eat the fruit of their own way and be filled with their own devices. Now that statement there is really fascinating, because what it seems to imply is that once you get down this road, when you have been reproved, when you've come up against a rebuke, when something you tried didn't work, instead of learning the lesson, turning around and going back the other way, you persevere in foolish conduct. And there comes a place where he says they will eat the fruit of their own way. It isn't that somebody has to do something to them. The natural results of their foolishness, their stupidity, of the things they've done will come home and they'll have it. The turning away of the simple shall slay them. In other words, it's the turning away that causes it, not some third party coming in and making it happen to you. You do it to yourself. The prosperity of fools shall destroy them. Whoever listens to me shall dwell safely and be quiet from the fear of evil. Well, we have seen all around us an example of the prosperity of fools. We've been looking at it now for, I don't know, how many decades have we seen this staggering increase in wealth in this country. It's been ever since World War II, really, so I'd say well over 50 years, nearly 60 years now, that we have been seeing this incredible explosion of wealth in this country. Of course, an awful lot of the problem is, as we've moved on toward the climax, is that so much of this wealth has been built on debt. Not real money, but the promise of money that we didn't have. You take the little plastic credit card down and you buy stuff with it, and you just build up debt, and you end up paying thousands and thousands of dollars for something because you pay interest on it for the rest of your life, that if you had paid for it when you bought it, it might have cost you $500. But that's the sort of thing that we have been doing. We've been building this prosperity up, on basically borrowed money. And we're going to watch A lot of people get hurt by this. Some of them guilty, some of them really not so guilty. At the same time, those who have listened to God, those who have listened to the wisdom of God, not as a mere argument, now mind you, we're not arguing, we listen to God not merely to prove this or that doctrinal structure thing, but who have been listening to God to learn how to order their lives, those people will be just fine as they make it through this period of time. Thomas Sowell remarked this week on why it is so many people take such huge risks for so little payoff, and he started out with the example of O.J. Simpson. Here's a guy who takes a chance on going to prison for what will amount to be the rest of his life in order to recover a few knickknacks. What in the world leads a person to take that kind of risk for that kind of stupidity? And he went on to talk about Leona Helmsley and Richard Nixon and a whole range of people who took chances they didn't need to take with appalling risks connected with them. And only when the house of cards fell down or when the roof fell on their heads did they really understand what they'd gotten themselves into. And he's asking himself why people do this. And he said this, quote, "What seems to run through the stories of people who take huge risks for small payoff is a sense that the rules simply do not apply to them." They're above it. You want to see a good example of it? Take a look at the governor of Illinois. This is a man who for the last 4 years has known he was under investigation, and he has the unmitigated gall to stand up and say, "It doesn't matter, tape me, listen to everything I say, call every word." And he has the unmitigated gall and the stupidity to try to auction off a Senate seat. Some joker said what he should have done was put it up on eBay and see how much he could get for it. Now you can plainly see this in this man. He bulled ahead as though nothing could happen to him. He thought he was bulletproof. Now, you know, we're kind of used to seeing this in people in their teens, late teens, early 20s, when they really think they got the world by the tail. Nothing's bad's going to ever happen to them. They are immortal. And they never think that far ahead to the consequences that could come down around their head. We're kind of used to that. And when you're 20 years old, sometimes you can take your lumps and you've got time to learn your lesson and crawl back out of the hole you dug for yourself. But my word, when you've grown to the place to where you're the governor of a huge state in a very powerful position and you make the same mistakes you made when you were 20, that's a little hard to see. As I speak to you, the governor of Illinois seems to be in denial even yet. It's bizarre, to say the very least. Now, one of the greatest poems in the Bible, you may not think of it this way, but it is found in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 11. I want to take you there now. Ecclesiastes 11, verse 1. It's a proverb, the way this starts off, and you've probably heard it many times in your life. "Cast your bread upon the waters, and you shall find it after many days. Give a portion to 7, give it to 8, for you know not what evil shall be upon the earth." Now, what in the Sam Hill is he talking about here? Give a portion to 7 and also to 8. That's a literary form from Hebrew where they will give it for 3 transgressions and for 4. It's just merely a way of speaking. He said for 7, no, for 8. Give these portions out. Cast your bread on the waters. Now, it's an odd saying. It's a little hard to follow. I remember many times scratching my head, kind of wondering, how am I supposed to take this and finding interpretations? I think there is a clue in one of Jesus' parables. You'll find it in Luke 16. Beginning in verse 1. And we're going to come back to Ecclesiastes, but right now we're going to go to Luke 16. He said to his disciples, "There was a certain rich man who had a steward, and the same was accused to him that he had wasted his goods." Okay, we got a man working for us here who's been unfaithful. All right? He called him in and says, "How am I hearing this of you? I want a full accounting of your stewardship. We're going to have an audit because you may be out of a job." Then the steward said within himself, "What am I going to do? I'm in a lot of trouble here. He's going to take away my stewardship. I can't dig. I'm too old to get out there with a shovel and dig holes in the ground, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I'm put out of this stewardship, they may receive me into their houses." What does that mean? What he means roughly by this is so that whenever I lose this job, maybe somebody out there will give me one. the house, somebody's house really is his enterprise, not only merely his house in which he and his family live, it's everything that he does. You know, I'm in this guy's house now. When he tosses me out in the street, maybe I can go to that guy. So here's what he did. He called every one of his Lord's debtors to him, and he said to the first, "What do you owe, my Lord?" He said, 100 measures of oil. Take down your bill, sit down quickly, write me a check for 50. And then he said to another, "How much do you owe?" He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said, "Take your bill, write 4 score. You know, in a way, what's happening here is what ought to be happening in certain parts of our economy today, where people who are owed a bunch of money go to the person that owns it and say, "How much do you owe? I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's work this out this way. If you'll do this, we'll cut your bill in half." Get some money instead of none. That's what he's doing. Well, what's really interesting is the Lord commended the unjust steward because he had at least acted wisely. He got himself in trouble, and having gotten there, he says, "Okay, what am I going to do now?" Because the children of this world are, in their generation, wiser than the children of light. And I'm afraid sometimes that's true. He says, "I say to you, make yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, so that when you fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitations." Now, I'm a little puzzled still by that expression, everlasting habitations. I'm not altogether sure, but the overall lesson is clear enough. Here's how the NIV puts that verse. "I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it's gone, you will be welcome into eternal dwellings." Now, again, I don't know what the eternal dwellings might mean in this context. But this is what Solomon, I think, is trying to tell us here. Use worldly wealth to make friends for yourself so that when the worldly wealth is gone, you will at least have some friends somewhere. That, I think, is what it's all about. Now, that's what I think also that Solomon is trying to tell us when he says, "Cast your bread upon the waters. You'll find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 to 8, for you don't know what evil is going to come upon the land." I'll tell you what, there comes times when having good friends means just a whole lot. So, Solomon then says in Ecclesiastes 11, "If the clouds be full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth." Okay, that's obvious, isn't it? "If the tree falls toward the south or the north, in the place where it falls, that's where it is." Now, I think this is Solomon's version of our bumper sticker that says, "Stuff happens." In other words, it is what it is. Deal with it. There have been clouds full of water. They're sooner or later, they're going to dump that rain on the earth, and you may have more than you want. Sooner or later, there's going to be a big windstorm come along, and a tree is going to come down, and the way it falls is going to depend on which way the wind blows when it breaks. Okay? What happens is what happens. Deal with it. Then he says in verse 4, "He that observes the wind shall not sow. He that regards the clouds shall not reap." And what he's talking about here, they told us in real estate school something interesting. One guy stood up there and says, "Now, if you really want to make money in real estate," he had been talking about rental properties and lots of stuff that you do. He said, "Stick your finger in a light socket and take 20 points off your IQ." Smart people, highly intelligent people, generally speaking, he said, don't make money in real estate. Just ordinary, intelligent people do. And the reason for it is they go out and do it. They don't analyze it. He introduced me to an expression called the paralysis of analysis. And there are people like that. They will analyze a problem to death. They will make up charts. They will lay out things. They will, they have this complete knowledge of how to beat the stock market. The only problem is they never get out and actually buy a stock. And all those charts and all that analysis, that won't make you any money. What Solomon's saying is, act now. Get on with it. You don't know the way of the Spirit, how the bones grow in the womb of her with child. We know a little more about that than he did, but still, we really don't know. Even so, you don't know the works of God who makes everything work. Don't bother, he said, trying to figure everything out. Just get to work. In the morning, sow your seed. In the evening, don't withhold your hand, because you don't know what shall prosper. You don't know whether this project is going to work or that project is going to work, either this or that, or whether they both are good. So you get that thing done in the morning, you get that thing done in the evening, and hopefully one of them will work. You just don't always know what it's going to be. What he's saying, I think, is actually you know what you have to do. And the sooner you get it done, the better off you are going to be. And you can never, ever be certain of the outcome. And so many people, because they are not certain of the outcome, never actually do anything. They just analyze it. Well, with one exception, I will say this. There's one thing you can be certain of. If you don't get the seed in the ground, you can be certain there will not be a crop. So that basically is where the message in this is. So the lesson for our times, where we are right here, right now, today, seems to be this. Get yourself to work. See to the tasks that are in front of you. Get them done. There's a funny set of television commercials, by the way, making the rounds. Take note of them. You'll see them. I don't think you get through an evening of television really without seeing 3 or 4 of these ads. They're advertising an array of products, but they all have one thing in common. Office workers who are fooling around and doing anything but working. There's one that runs in this area. It's a Sudden Link cable television ad of this guy where he has gathered up staplers from all around the office, and he's trying to build a sculpture out of office staplers. So now building a sculpture out of staplers is hard. Using Sudden Link is easy. And, of course, in the middle of his work, a girl comes along looking for her stapler, which has disappeared. Hers happens to be in the bottom of the stack, jerks it out, down it comes. It's a funny commercial. But the problem, see, is here's a guy in an office who has time to go building a sculpture out of staplers in the office. It's a metaphor for what goes on in corporate America to this day. Because we have been so wealthy, we have been so sloppy, our corporations have got so much built-in slack that we stand today on the verge of seeing the collapse of these 3 great automaking giants, Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors. And I think you can see a metaphor in the commercials that you see on television every evening as you sit and watch as to what's wrong with corporate America, what may even be wrong with your business, what may even be wrong with the way you work when you go to your office. So, when the time comes to lay off people, you want to be the one worker that your boss absolutely, positively does not want to do without. You don't want to be that guy who was standing there building a sculpture out of staplers he snitched from people's desks around the office. Solomon went on to say, truly, and a pleasant thing it is for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man live many years and rejoice in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. Everything that comes is vanity. Well, we've enjoyed the run we've had, haven't we? We've enjoyed the prosperity. We've enjoyed the wealth. Our kids, teenagers, have got more money than my dad had when I was growing up. They've got cell phones. They've got everything they want. They have computers. They have got the most educated thumbs in the world for doing text messages. It's all there. Well, we've all enjoyed it. Okay, but remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. There are good times and there are bad times. And what he's just simply saying, yeah, the light is sweet and it's really pleasant to be out on the beach in the sun. But you got to remember that the days of darkness will be many and you're going to have to live through them as well. All that comes is vanity. All that comes is meaninglessness. Now, there is meaning with God, but there isn't any meaning anywhere else. We need to understand that. I made the point recently that the difference in winning and losing is oftentimes how you play the bad hands. We have had the days of light, and I have a very strong feeling that days of darkness lie ahead of us now. And it isn't just a matter of economics. You get the sense in the world at large that something is very much amiss. I have a very strong feeling that we're going to see some hard economic times, some high unemployment, a lot of people out of work, a lot of people learning to depend on their friends and their family. I also have a very strong feeling that an awful lot of people are going to die. I don't know if it's going to be through some nuclear blast somewhere, or I don't know if it's because the Israelis are going to take out half of Iran in order to get rid of their nuclear program. I don't know if India and Pakistan are going to start shooting nuclear weapons at one another. I have no idea. I just have this sense that we stand on the verge of a time of darkness when an awful lot of people are going to die. And we're going to have to live through the bad times just like we have lived through the good times. And there are going to be some of us who will manage it and some of us who simply will not. Life will go on. People will fall in love. Children will be born. And it's our job to make this phase of our life work. For some, life will seem worthless, but not for us. He goes on to say in verse 9, "Rejoice, O young man, in your youth. Let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment." So even though I seem to be sliding and skating right now, what you mean is that sooner or later I'm going to have to deal with it? Yep, that's exactly what he means. Know it. Therefore, remove sorrow from your heart, put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Now that seems like an odd combination. What's it saying? Most of what we apply ourselves to in our youth are pointless. We all understand that. It isn't that they don't serve a purpose. Games teach us certain lessons. You play football in high school, you learn the value of teamwork. You learn the value of hard work. You discipline your body. You get stronger than you otherwise might have been if you hadn't have had the challenges there. So, it does that. And it isn't that the things we do like this don't serve a purpose. We learn lessons and skills we will use later. Athletics teaches us coordination, the importance of teamwork. But they are vanity in that they are meaningless in themselves unless there is something that comes later on. So if you are a young person, how do you use this? What do you do with it? Well, try the New International Version. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 10. "So then, banish anxiety from your heart and cast off the troubles of your body. For youth and vigor are meaningless," and they might have added, "of themselves." Youth and vigor of themselves are meaningless. If you don't do something with youth and vigor, they're pointless. You don't have to be a genius to figure that out, do you? If you don't do anything with it, it's pointless. And there's nothing better for banishing anxiety than getting to work on something. Now, I want to tell you something important this day. It's the reason why some people fall in the dark days and other people don't. It isn't obscure, it isn't difficult, it isn't hidden. It is right there in front of your face. We call it the Bible. People who read the Bible are quite naturally affected by what they read. Wisdom is in front of you on every page. How does it work? Well, I saw a cartoon once. It's a priceless cartoon. It showed an old man, the bearded man, obviously intended to represent God, sitting in front of a very large screen. And he had a keyboard laid out in front of him with all kinds of buttons, levers, switches, and what have you. And off to the right, a nice big round button with the word in all capital letters and exclamation after it, "Smite." The implication is God can reach out. Didn't see something he liked, he could hit that button and smite somebody with it. Well, it's a surprisingly accurate way of representation of what some people think about God and the law. And it is shockingly wrong. Someone once compared the Bible to an instruction book that comes with a new car. A lot of cars these days are complicated. I have to get my manual out every spring and every fall because I have forgotten how to set the clock. It's not that simple. You actually have to do some particular things in order to get your clock set. They're very complicated. Now, the comparison, someone compared the Bible to an instruction book, God's instruction book for man as to how to live the life. So, God has given us a book to tell us how things are, how they work, how to live, and so forth. That's fair enough. But it doesn't take long for questions to arise. Along comes Jesus, for example, and heals on the Sabbath day, and the Pharisees question it. This is an issue of the Bible. Healing was perceived as work. Can't work on the Sabbath day, therefore it's wrong to heal on the Sabbath day. And Jesus says, now wait a minute. Which one of you guys out here, having an ox or an ass that falls into a ditch on the Sabbath day, will not get together with your friends and help that animal get out of the hole? It's fairly obvious in the way he puts this that he expected and that they would have answered, oh, sure, we'll all get out there and get the dumb ass out of the hole in the road. And Jesus said, well, now, if you'll do that, why is it wrong for me to heal this poor sap on the Sabbath day? I mean, this is a human being made in the image of God. I'm not supposed to heal him. Now, are you breaking the Sabbath when you go out there and get this ox out of the ditch? Yep, you certainly are. But Jesus implies, and the Pharisees, I think, probably agreed, that that was okay. How'd that work? Well, the Bible tells you what is right. When you feel you must go contrary to that, you accept the risk of it to do the greater good. What do I mean by that? Well, one of the old classics examples, and it's a real example out of the real world, is a religious girl in Holland who protected another girl, a Jewish girl, in the attic during that very bad time when the Nazis were carrying the Jews off to the concentration camp, who lied to the Nazis looking for this girl about having her hidden away. Now, is a lie a lie? Yes, it is. She felt, however, that in protecting this girl, she was doing the greater good. And I think that's a very good thing to do. You basically do what you feel is the greater good, and you trust in God's grace. That's what grace is, by the way, to see you through to the other side. You are acting in good faith to do good to another human being. You heal on the Sabbath day, not because it isn't work. You heal because it is a good that you can do, and God's grace accepts it. The same thing is true of helping a jackass out of a ditch. An awful lot of us jackasses have had to be helped out of those ditches a lot. So, this is actually what Jesus is talking about in the model prayer where he says, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. That is precisely what that is all about. The example is also given of David and the showbread, and it's a very specific one. Now, what does all this have to do with the subject under discussion? Well, let's go back to where we started, Proverbs chapter 1. Before Solomon got to the personification of wisdom, he states his purpose in writing the book, and it's really worth considering this. Beginning Proverbs 1, verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. 4, and he gives us four fours in this particular case. 4, attaining wisdom and discipline. 4, understanding words and insight. 4, acquiring a disciplined and prudent life, doing what is just and fair. I think I have 5 of them, as a matter of fact. 4, giving prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. 4, understanding proverbs and parables and the sayings and the riddles of the wise. Now, this is really important here, because he said he gives you all these purposes, and the last one here is the reason why you need to apply yourself to these things is so that you will understand proverbs, parables, sayings, and riddles. Is it possible that one of the reasons Jesus spoke in parables, and one of the reasons why is some people understood them and some people did not, is that the ones who understood them were the people who had applied themselves to wisdom through the pages of the Bible, Proverbs in particular? Oh, I think there is something to that. The realization so often that the Bible is saying something to you profound that is beyond the words on the page. And this is true in all too many times and places. He said, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and especially discipline. And of course, this answers the question that we ask in the personification of wisdom as a woman. She is everywhere. She's talking to us all the time. Some people hear, most don't. Why don't they? Because they hate instruction, and especially discipline. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. There'll be a garland and a grace to your head and a chain to adorn your neck. The instruction that comes to you from mother and dad and grandmother and granddad is of so much value. Don't let that get away from you, because the time is going to come when it will make the difference in your life, in days of light and in days of darkness. My son, as sinners entice you, do not give in to that. This is kind of a fascinating little statement. Again, this is one of those times where you try to look beyond what's on the page. If they say, come along with us, let's lie and wait for someone's blood, let's waylay some harmless soul, let's swallow them up like the grave and whole like those that go down to the pit. We'll get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot with us and we'll share a common purse. What's it saying? Well, very obviously, it's telling you to stay out of gangs. Stay away from that type of thing. But you got to reach out a little further. There's an awful lot of harm that gets done by some of the people that we associate with. It's funny that in the recent presidential campaign, there was an awful lot of comparing of a man's associations, and the expression guilt by association. That's a very bad thing. We don't want guilt by association. I guess we don't. But whatever happened to the old adage, a man is known by the company he keeps? It's true, isn't it? Don't we know a lot about a person by the people he hangs out with? Well, you see, this is what you need to understand about yourself. You will be known by the people you hang out with, and whether guilt by association is fair or not, guilt by association happens. And it's something you want to stay away from. Be your own man. Be your own woman. My son, don't go with them. Don't even set foot in their path. Their feet rush to sin. They are swift to shed blood. You know, it's useless to spread a net in the view of a bird. You're trying to catch a bird, you put the net where they say, that's pointless. You're not going to get anything that way. So how is it that people can't see what they're doing to themselves? These men lie in wait for their own blood. They waylay themselves. Such is the end of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the lives of the people who get it. Now, we may be about to see this played out on the national stage in the prosecution of the governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich. I think I got it right that time. You may never have heard of him. You will hear of him now. Never vote for a man without a forehead. You know, that's simple enough. And you'll see what I mean. He is a man, and never vote for a man who is in love with his own hair. If you got that, there's something radically wrong somewhere in that. Now, he goes on in chapter 2 to say, my son, if you will accept my words, if you'll store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom, applying your heart to understanding, if you call out for insight, if you cry aloud for understanding, if you look for it like silver, if you search for it like hidden treasure, then you're going to understand the fear of God. You're going to know the knowledge of God. Now wait, didn't he just say that wisdom is on every street corner and at every gate calling out to us? Yeah, he did. Then why do we have to look for it and search for it and dig for it? Don't we all know that there are far too many people out there who utterly lack wisdom, discretion, knowledge? I mean, we run into them all the time. So we have, again, the contrast between wisdom is everywhere, and some people have it, and some people don't. How do we account for it? Well, have you ever seen one of those picture puzzles in which a number of objects are hidden in plain view? They're laid out, and you can see quite a few puzzle games like this on the computer at different places where they'll have a picture. And you solve the problem, you've got to locate this, a whole list of stuff that you're supposed to find in this particular room. Or have you ever played hide the thimble, where somebody goes out of the room and you take this little object, little thimble, some of you may not even know what a thimble is anymore, and you put it somewhere in plain sight. And the game is you come back into the room and you look and you look and you look to try to find the thimble. You'd be surprised how hard it is. Now, for you to gain wisdom, a few things have to be in place. One, you have to value it. If it's of no value to it, you will walk into it and never see it and never know it was there. 2, you really need to be looking for it, just like you are when you're looking for that thimble when you walk into the room. It's there. It's in plain sight. It's right there. But if you're not looking for it, you won't see it. You have to be willing to grasp it. You know, get hold of this thing. I have to get it, and then you have to be ready to use it. Otherwise, you can sit in a room with the wisdom in plain view and never know it is there. For the Lord, he says in chapter 2, verse 6, gives wisdom, and from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He holds victory in store for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk blameless. He guards the course of the just and protects the way of the faithful ones. Now, God's a powerful patron. Okay? There he sits at his console, and he sees you walking over there, and he flips a switch to keep you from tripping over that log. Okay? Is that what God does? Well, what is remarkable about this is God does not have to lift a finger. He does not have to push a button to make it work. He built it into his creation. He explained it in his words. Now take Governor Blagojevich as an example. If he were upright, he would win. Notice, he holds victory in store for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk is blameless. If Governor Blagojevich's walk was blameless, it would be a shield to him. What would be a shield? The blameless walk would be a shield. If you take this seriously, Solomon said, then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path, for wisdom will enter your heart, knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. You'll like it. Now listen carefully. Discretion shall protect you. What will? God? Well, yeah. How? The discretion does it without God pressing a button. Discretion will protect you. Understanding will guard you. Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse. This isn't magic. It doesn't require, well, I'll do the right thing and therefore God will press a button and make my life work for me. No, that's not what happens. It's not what happens. Wisdom keeps you from it, from men whose words are perverse, who leave the straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong. They rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. What will protect you? What will guard you? What will save you? Discretion and wisdom do the job, and God does not have to press a button to make it work. But for those things to guard you and protect you, you got to have them. Now, I could go on, but I don't think I will. I don't want to rob you of the joy of discovery of the waits for you in the pages of the book of Proverbs. There are so many. But I want to return to the last chapter of Ecclesiastes because it is so profound. It begins by saying, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years come when you say, I find no pleasure in them. Tell me something. Would you like to know what those years will be like? Just go visit a nursing home. Maybe go down and do a little volunteer work. Spend a little time there with some of those old people who can no longer dress themselves, who can't hear very well, who vision is rather poor. And you'll be surprised at how often they'll be in a room or somewhere the television will be on and they won't be watching it. Their eyes are glazed over. They'll be staring off into space because the years have come when they find no pleasure in them. That will happen. Consider this before the sun and the light of the moon of the stars grow dark and the clouds return after the rain. When the keepers of the house tremble, the strong men stoop. When the grinders cease because they are few and those looking through the windows grow dim. When the doors to the street are closed and the sound of grinding fades. When men rise up at the sound of a bird, but all their songs grow faint. This is poetic imagery. What do you think is being represented by all of this? What do you think he's trying to present for us? Well, one thing that is here is the statement, remember your Creator in the days of your youth before these days come when you have no pleasure in them. when maybe you heard the sound of a bird and maybe you didn't, but you don't hear things like you used to. Remember what it was like to walk out on your porch and hear those songbirds in the spring just absolutely raising Cain all through the trees? And think, what will it be like if I couldn't hear them anymore? If I couldn't know what that was like? What do you do when men are afraid of heights and dangers in the streets? You know, when you get to the top of the stairs to go down from your bedroom in the morning and you have to grab both railings and hold on really tight because you're afraid if you fall down those stairs, that'll be the end of you. That happens to old people, you know. They're not altogether sure sometimes whether the hip breaks and they fall or they fall and break the hip. But see, that's what happens when you get old. And I got news for all you 20-year-olds. You're going to get old. I hope you're going to get old. You should live so long. Remember him before the silver cord is severed or the golden bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring or the wheel broken at the well, and the dust returns to the ground from which it came, and the spirit returns. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless. Well, he says, be warned, my son, of anything in addition to all this. Of the making of many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God. Keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed to judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or it's evil. And I want to leave you with this thought. God will bring it into judgment. But what you should know is He actually brought it into judgment a long time ago. In the fact that He created a world that works a certain way, and He presented us with every turn of the road, all sorts of knowledge about what that way is like and what will work and what will hurt us. And then we live in a way that hurts us. The judgment will follow, not because God pressed the smite button, but because the act itself brings the results that we don't want to come our way. It's a good time now as we head into an incredible transition period in human history, to realize that life is good. And life, even though we have a hard time here and a hard time there, is ultimately good for those of us who love God and are called according to His purpose. And that in learning and studying and applying ourselves to learning what He is doing for us and what's wants for us, these are the things that actually make for a life that works. Until next time.